let's talk about the Anunnaki.
Then you find out, like, no one is really just kind of trying to piece stuff together, specifically talking about these ancient tablets, which are, to me, some of the most interesting things about ancient history, particularly what came out of ancient Sumer. Ancient Sumer, when you look at their tablets and, like, what are they saying? And why would they dedicate so much time to talking about this stuff?
Exactly.
Why do they have pictures of giant enormous people looking things with like a humanoid with a tail sitting on their lap? Like, what is this, just fiction? Like, why would they detail this, and how do they have a representation of the solar system with the correct amount of planets and relatively the correct order and size? You know, it's not exact, but it's an artistic version of the real thing. And how the hell 6,000, 5,000 years ago do they know that? What explanations do we have? Like, what's the conventional explanations when people tried to dismiss what they knew in ancient Sumer?
Well, the conventional explanation is always going to the term mythology. They throw mythology around, you know, left and right to cover up the fact that they have no clue or idea. So they turn it into mythology so they can kind of say it's all fantasy and fairy tales, and this is how they express themselves or how they understood the universe. It's all mythology, it's all fake, but in reality, it's not all fake. These people left behind such detailed records and information. It's a time capsule of information on stone tablets for us today to be able to decipher, break down, and understand, and that's what we're here to do now.
When you look at these ancient languages like Cuneiform, can you read that? Do you know how to read it?
Yeah, a small amount of it, Studying it from books that I had bought right off of Amazon. Yeah, so basically you take a stick. It looks like a stick with a kind of a curved end, right? Almost sharpened. It's called a stylus. And then
just like a stylus for an iPad.
Exactly, very similar, right? And then you take a piece of wet clay, and right before it's too wet or too dry, right in the middle stage, you then start wedging, making these incredible lines into the clay, and then from that you get this cuneiform text. So this text literally, some of the letters actually relate to complete ideas. But it's incredible work, and it takes a long time to do. And then you have to let this thing dry, and then it becomes stone. So, if people were supposed to be trying to worry about how they're going to get their next meal, shelter for the night, and all these kind of things, who has time to sit down and write these incredible works of art, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example?
So
I think they really were writing down, and also they were transcribing information that was given to them by these quote-unquote gods with the lowercase g.
So when you're reading things like the Epic of Gilgamesh...
Interesting point right there. The gods with a lowercase g. If you read the Bible, there's a few instances where there's a capital G, and then there's a few instances where there's a lowercase g. And the word Elohim is plural.
Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for people who don't know, is one of the oldest versions of a lot of the stories that you hear in the Bible. Very similar to them. They seem to be... There always seems to be a great flood. There's a few heroes. There's angry gods. There's a bunch of stuff going on. And Zecharia Sitchin's work was like the most controversial on the Sumerian text, right? Because there's a whole website called sitchiniswrong.com. Like, people go crazy about him. But when he starts talking about it, when you read some of the things that they wrote, and when you see like some of the images that they created, images that look like the double helix from DNA, and there's a bunch of that now we represent the caduceus, which represents pharmacies and drugs. Like that's the old version of an image of the double helix of DNA, or at least it looks super similar to that.
Oh, it definitely is, because it's referenced even in the Egyptian Book of the Dead and other ancient texts. So there's no coincidences here. Now, Zecharia Sitchin, I don't particularly go by his work. Not because it's controversial. I believe he was one of the greatest researchers of all time. And the reason why is because he laid out so much information for us to begin to scratch our head and ask questions. But what I figured out was that by going through the UCLA CDLI online Cuneiform digital library, say that fast 10 times, I was able to take stone tablets and decipher them myself. So anyone can go online to the UCLA CDLI online Cuneiform digital library and read these stone tablets for themselves. You don't need Zecharia Sitchin.
First, you got to figure out how to read Cuneiform, though.
You don't need anyone else. And as I began to break these tablets down...
Do they have them transcribed, or are you reading the actual tablet?
They transcribe them. They actually transcribe them into English for you.
Is there controversy as far as, like, are there different versions of the transcription? Like, do some people think it's interpreted differently? Is, like, some debate about that?
Only where it comes to where some of the text is missing. There could be pieces chipped off of tablets. You see that corner missing from that tablet right there in the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Just look how wild is that?
Yeah.
Just how wild is that exists?
Yeah.
And that this was, it's so hard for people to put in their brain 5,000 years of time.
Yeah.
And that there's these people that had this very bizarre language. Like,
why does he say it's bizarre? I mean, I'm sure they would think our language was just as bizarre. And I think the most amazing thing is that we like to say that writing and stuff like that is like way newer in like the printing press and stuff like that. But it's like they had a way to write and it wasn't from Gutenberg.
when you look at that language, we don't even know what it sounds like, right?
Right. No, and the language popped up out of nowhere. You know, you're talking about a civilization that appeared out of nothing.
It looks like computer code.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Just imagine like a human being deciding that they were going to write down in these very bizarre, and they all agreed that all these things mean a certain thing. So they had to somehow or another have a Rosetta Stone. Or
why is he so like about it? Like we have multiple languages today, which are, it's the same idea, dog. It's the time period. Like I understand, but he's like, it's impossible to believe that people were smart enough to do this.
Or something where they're documenting it so that people can learn it and teach it. And then we're looking at it 5,000 years later.
Yeah.
It's so amazing.
It is. And what's incredible is this text was translated in the 1800s, long before Zecharia Sitchin was born. So there are some, some rumors that, he was the only one that could decipher these tablets. Well, no. George Smith, who worked as an Assyriologist and wrote many books and deciphered these Sumerian tablets in the 1800s. So we're talking about texts that have been deciphered for a few hundred years, nothing that was just deciphered recently.
So what are the first decipherings? Like what year was the first deciphering?
It was in 1800. I think around 1850. George Smith. He actually worked at the I believe it was Cambridge.
What was his take? Like when he's reading all these wacky stories and all the Anunnaki stuff? Like what's his take on it?
He is literally subscribing to this information the way almost that you and I see it today. These people saw something, experienced something, interacted with something, and he cataloged it, and it